Senator Mark Kelly just orchestrated a masterclass in accountability on national television, systematically dismantling Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over a terrifying reality about America's dangerously depleted missile stockpiles and an official military directive that borders on a direct violation of international law. The intense and historic confrontation was ignited by a single chilling quote that Hegseth had previously delivered to the public. "We will keep pushing, keep advancing, no quarter, no mercy for our enemies." Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth found himself sitting in the hot seat, facing an unprecedented and utterly brutal line of questioning from Senator Mark Kelly regarding a staggering $330 billion military budget. But as the hearing methodically unfolded, it became abundantly clear to everyone watching that this confrontation was not merely about taxpayer dollars and federal spreadsheets. It was a profound reckoning over Hegseth's very own words and the strategic direction of the United States Armed Forces. Senator Kelly opened the floor with a calm, calculated demeanor, acknowledging a universally understood truth about modern warfare. He stated that American weaponry, specifically advanced systems like SM-3S, Tomahawks, and Patriot missiles, possess combat capabilities that remain completely unmatched on the global stage. However, he quickly pointed out the dangerous double-edged nature of relying so heavily on these assets. These weapons are exquisitely complex, astronomically expensive, and require an extensive, agonizingly long amount of time to manufacture. Kelly initially sought clarification on a budget request of $31.8 billion, a massive sum supposedly dedicated to expanding production capacity for these critical missile stockpiles. Secretary Hegseth immediately had to correct the record, scrambling to explain that he was actually looking at $53 billion for the acceleration of 14 critical munitions, meaning the true cost was more than $20 billion higher than Kelly's initial figure. Senator Kelly emphasized the extreme gravity of this situation, noting the immense shared anxiety across Washington regarding how American military stockpiles and the domestic industrial base would actually endure a prolonged, high-intensity conflict against a formidable global adversary like China. He highlighted a stark and troubling contradiction in the Pentagon's current strategy. Since the current conflict began, the Defense Department has continuously and loudly boasted about the sheer volume of military action, proudly citing that over 13,000 targets had been struck by April 8th. Kelly meticulously read back Hegseth's own public statements to the committee. He recalled how on March 2nd, the secretary described operations as a massive, overwhelming attack across all domains of warfare, celebrating the striking of more than 1,000 targets in just the first 24 hours. He noted Hegseth's boast on March 10th about experiencing the most intense day of strikes inside of Iran, and again on April 6th, highlighting the largest volume of strikes since day one of the operation. The Defense Department has endlessly released video after video showing things blowing up to Project Strength. While explicitly acknowledging the undeniable and fearsome strength of the United States military and their ability to accomplish incredibly hard things, Kelly pivoted to the grounded questions that truly matter. He demanded to know what this immense operational tempo actually costs the country and what tangible, long-term security it achieves for the American people. The reality exposed during the hearing is that the military has been rapidly and aggressively burning through its absolute best, most expensive weapons. Open source reporting estimates that an outrageous number of Patriot interceptors have been expended. Without revealing classified exact numbers, Kelly emphasized that a massive quantity of Patriots, thousands of rounds, JASSMs, and Tomahawks have vanished from the inventory. Because these exquisite munitions absolutely cannot be manufactured overnight, and because the budget request clearly reflects that reality, Kelly relentlessly pressed for a hard truth. Exactly how many years, specifically, is it going to take to replace the complex systems that have already been fired? Hegseth attempted to defer the intricate financial details to the comptroller, but he was ultimately forced to admit a terrifying, eye-watering figure on the record. When accounting for long-range fires, including JASSMs, LRASMs, and Tomahawks, the cost was sitting at $238 billion, plus an additional $40 billion for hypersonics, bringing the true munitions cost closer to a monumental $330 billion. When pressed yet again by Kelly on the specific timeline for replenishment, Hegseth conceded that the previous time frame the military existed under was completely unacceptable. He admitted that replacing these weapons would take months and years. He described a frantic, almost desperate ongoing effort to construct entirely new manufacturing plants in real time, just to replace what the military currently possesses. He estimated this massive industrial overhaul would take anywhere from 2 to 3 years just to achieve a fourfold increase of what they have today, while simultaneously pointing to the reality of the previous administration sending weapons to Ukraine and allocating them elsewhere as a contributing factor. Senator Kelly masterfully distilled this complex bureaucratic admission into a grim, undeniable summary that echoed through the room. He stated that the United States has effectively fired years' worth of highly advanced munitions, racking up an immediate $33 billion price tag, severely depleting critical defense stockpiles, and committing to a regional conflict that is entirely devoid of a clear, achievable endgame. This financial revelation alone would have made the hearing highly consequential and critical for the public to witness. But Senator Kelly was only just getting started with his interrogation. He seamlessly shifted the focus away from federal expenditures, massive price tags, and supply chains to an infinitely more severe and consequential topic: the official rules of engagement and the moral compass of the United States military. He pointed out the glaring strategic failure of the current campaign. Despite the expenditure of these irreplaceable assets to achieve supposed objectives, the war remains fundamentally stuck in a dangerous quagmire. The vital Strait of Hormuz remains closed to international commerce. The dangerous uranium regime stands completely intact, and the nuclear material is still firmly in the hands of adversaries. Meanwhile, everyday American citizens are being crushed by the heavy burden of soaring economic costs, without having any clear understanding of what their government is actually trying to accomplish with this endless war. With only a minute left on the clock, Kelly moved in for the final, devastating point. He confronted Hegseth about a hearing from the previous day, giving the secretary one final chance to address a highly controversial public statement. Kelly asked Hegseth point blank if he understood that the official legal definition of giving no quarter means explicitly refusing legitimate offers of surrender or ordering that captured detainees will be executed. Hegseth attempted to dodge the trap, weakly arguing that the only entity that kills detainees or targets civilians is the Iranians, claiming that the Iranian military is the one being crushed. He completely rejected Kelly's articulation of the question. Refusing to let the evasion slide into the congressional record unchecked, Kelly sharply reminded the secretary that the terrifying definition he had just read came directly, word for word, from the Department of Defense's very own Law of War manual. Hegseth tried to cut to the chase, simply stating that the United States military fights to win and that they follow the law. Kelly offered Hegseth one final agonizing opportunity to walk back his words. He reminded Hegseth that his exact quote was, "We will keep pushing, keep advancing, no quarter, no mercy for our enemies," and noted that the secretary had failed to clarify this statement the day prior. Kelly directly asked if Hegseth still stood by the deeply troubling statement he made on March 13th. Hegseth stubbornly repeated his rehearsed talking point, claiming they had simply untied the hands of their warfighters and reiterating that they fight to win and follow the law. Seeing the absolute refusal to clarify or retract the statement, Kelly delivered a quiet, devastating conclusion. He stated that as the Secretary of Defense, words carry immense, world-altering weight. Kelly declared that Hegseth's blatant refusal to retract a directive that mirrors a war crime proved exactly why he was fundamentally unfit for the highest civilian position in the military, and that this response made it perfectly clear to both the American people and to America's enemies. Hegseth may have naively assumed the discussion would end with that line, but it didn't. That single exchange transformed a standard political debate over budgets into a historic, monumental showdown that was about to unfold in the public eye. To truly understand the incredible weight of this moment, one must look closely at Senator Kelly's distinguished background. He is not a career politician reading blindly from a staffer's memo. He spent 20 years as a highly trained naval aviator. He flew highly dangerous military missions over Iraq, logged more than 5,000 flight hours in the cockpit, and commanded the International Space Station. When Mark Kelly talks about the complex law of war, he is most certainly not reading from an academic textbook. He is speaking directly from a long career spent operating strictly within rules of engagement, where the line between lawful, honorable conduct and conduct that crosses severe legal and ethical boundaries was never an abstract concept. It was an absolute uncompromising line that military professionals are rigorously trained to recognize, endlessly uphold, and never, ever cross. This profound military background matters enormously for understanding exactly why he pressed so incredibly hard on a phrase that a civilian layman might otherwise dismiss as mere political posturing. The phrase "no quarter" carries a highly specific, universally recognized legal meaning. It is absolutely not a rhetorical flourish meant to sound tough on television. Under the Geneva Conventions, which the United States has proudly ratified and championed for decades, ordering that no quarter be given is a serious, undeniable violation of international military law. Article 40 of Additional Protocol, I states it plainly, and the DoD Law of War Manual, which Kelly cited directly to the Secretary's face, reflects this exact standard. Declaring no quarter means announcing in advance that surrenders will not be accepted under any circumstances, and that combatants who willingly lay down their arms will not be taken in as prisoners. It is one of the oldest, most foundational prohibitions in the entire law of armed conflict. It is deeply rooted in centuries of military custom, precisely because professional armies recognize that without this single vital rule, wars immediately lose the vital constraints that separate honorable combat from something far, far worse. Secretary Hegseth deliberately said those exact words on March 13th in a highly visible public statement. No quarter, no mercy for our enemies. Crucially, he said them as the sitting Secretary of Defense. He did not say them as a television commentator, not as a political campaign surrogate, and certainly not as a private citizen venting frustration. As the civilian head of the United States military, the person who sits uniquely in the chain of command, directly below the President of the United States and directly above every single general and admiral in the American Armed Forces, what the Secretary of Defense says is never just rhetoric absorbed into the daily noise of political discourse. His official language filters all the way down the chain. It gets repeated in briefings, and it gets interpreted as policy by young people in uniform operating in highly volatile, active deployment zones. This is the deeper, more terrifying dimension of the hearing that a simple back and forth between two men at a table could not fully convey to a casual viewer. Kelly was not trying to score a cheap political point for a viral video. He was asking a targeted question with real, life or death operational consequences. Military law explicitly places responsibility for unauthorized, illegal orders on the person who officially issues them, not only on the soldiers who carry them out. Extensive historical military precedents establish this unbreakable framework, and American military law strictly codifies it. The Uniform Code of Military Justice is crystal clear that carrying out an unlawful order is not, and never will be, a valid legal defense in a court-martial. What Kelly was relentlessly pressing for was to discover whether the man sitting at the very top of that massive chain of command truly understood the legal and institutional weight of his own public declarations. Hegseth never actually answered that vital question. Instead, he answered a completely different one, repeating, "We fight to win, and we follow the law." That repetitive sentence is what lawyers call a conclusory assertion. It states a broad conclusion without addressing the actual premises of the argument. Kelly had not asked whether the military generally follows the law. He had asked whether a highly specific public statement by the Secretary of Defense, one that appeared to officially signal a posture of refusing surrender and completely disregarding the protections afforded to captured combatants, was still the official, active position of the Department of Defense. Those are fundamentally not the same question, and Hegseth's evasive response addressed the first while leaving the second, much more dangerous question entirely untouched. What made Kelly's final, brutal line land the way it did was not unchecked anger or performative outrage. If you watch the transcript carefully, he did not raise his voice, and he did not repeat himself for dramatic effect. He calmly stated a definitive conclusion. The things you say matter, And your response here right now makes it clear to the American people exactly why you are not right for this job. That is the measured sentence of someone who came to that congressional hearing having already done the exhaustive work, who already knew exactly what evasive answer he expected to receive, and who reached the end of a meticulously prepared argument with absolutely no surprises. The only surprise, if there was one at all, was in the sheer sharpness of how incredibly calmly he delivered the final blow. The extensive questioning about munitions at the start of that hearing was not disconnected from this dramatic conclusion. It was the exact same core concern wearing different clothes. Kelly's central argument, brilliantly structured across the entire exchange, was this: the United States is rapidly spending irreplaceable assets at an enormous financial cost for objectives that have not been clearly defined, all under a civilian leadership that does not appear to fundamentally understand the legal and ethical constraints that govern the use of deadly force. The $330 billion munitions bill, the years of dangerous stockpile depletion, the Strait of Hormuz's continued closure, the regional standoff that remains completely intact, and finally, the stubborn refusal to clarify a statement that raised serious, undeniable questions under military law. These were not separate subjects brought up at random. They were sequential, devastating points in a single, cohesive argument about the absolute necessity of accountability. That profound argument will not simply resolve itself within the walls of a hearing room. The vital questions Kelly raised about munitions, replenishment timelines are now a permanent matter of public record. The Defense Department will inevitably be asked to account for these massive shortfalls in future budget cycles. Furthermore, the chilling no quarter statement is now permanently part of the congressional record as well, with a specific date attached March 13th and a specific high-ranking official officially named as the source. Whether that undeniable fact matters legally, politically, or operationally on the battlefield is something that absolutely no one in that room could definitively answer on that day. What this incredible exchange did accomplish was naming the perilous gap between the tough-talking language of wartime leadership and the strict legal and strategic obligations that such language carries on the world stage. That gap has admittedly always existed in wartime, as leaders naturally reach for phrases that project strength and national resolve. The phrase no quarter has certainly been used loosely in sports commentary, in aggressive business rhetoric, and in fiery campaign speeches. But the Secretary of Defense is not a campaign surrogate trying to fire up a political base. The exact moment that phrase leaves his mouth in an official capacity, it is no longer just rhetorical shorthand. It immediately becomes a statement of national policy until it is officially clarified or retracted, and Pete Hegseth cowardly chose to do neither. This leaves the nation with a profound question worth sitting with, precisely because it does not have a clean, easy answer. When a senior government official blatantly declines to clarify a statement that a sitting senator, citing the department's own legal manual, identifies as completely inconsistent with the established laws of armed conflict, what is the appropriate institutional response? The Senate can ask tough questions, and the congressional record can accurately reflect what was said and what was conspicuously not said. But the actual mechanisms for ensuring real accountability at the highest levels of civilian defense leadership are unfortunately not straightforward. That institutional gap in oversight is not entirely new. It has surfaced in various forms during every major American conflict since World War II. What is completely different here is hearing it named this explicitly in this highly public setting with this incredible level of documentary precision by someone armed with Senator Kelly's specific, undeniable professional background. What this confrontation ultimately means for the conduct of the current global conflict, for the officials who are tasked with prosecuting it, and for the democratic institutions that are supposed to provide rigorous oversight is a vital question that will outlast this single hearing by a very long way. But what do you think about this historic clash of ideologies? Should a civilian leader be held to the strict, uncompromising letter of international military law, or does Washington get to quietly make its own rules of engagement when the cameras are off? Leave your uncensored thoughts in the comments below. To support our ongoing mission of preserving these vital, hidden archives and bringing real, unflinching accountability to light, make absolutely sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel right now. Thank you for watching.